I broke up with Liam after dating for 2 years. He was a software engineer, brilliant with technology, and at first I thought that was cool. Our apartment was filled with smart devices he had installed: lights, speakers, a thermostat, even the lock on the front door. He called it our future home. When we broke up, I kept the apartment and he moved out. The breakup was clean, or so I thought. He seemed to accept it, and I felt a sense of relief. The first weird thing happened a week later. I came home from work to find the apartment freezing cold. I checked the smart thermostat. It was set to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, about 4 degrees Celsius. I figured it was a glitch and set it back to normal. The next day it happened again. Then came the texts. Friends would ask me why I sent them a bizarre, angry message at 3 a.m. I checked my phone and there would be no record of it. I changed my social media passwords, but I'd still get locked out of my own accounts. I was constantly on edge, feeling like I was losing my mind. Liam, when I confronted him via text, played dumb. "That sounds awful. Hope you figure it out," he wrote back. "Maybe your Wi-Fi isn't secure." The real terror began one Tuesday night. I was home alone, watching a movie. Suddenly the living room lights, which were smart bulbs, flickered off, then on, then off again. My heart started hammering in my chest. I grabbed my phone to use the app to control them, but the app wouldn't load. It said my login credentials were a password I didn't recognize. Then the smart speaker in the corner crackled to life. It started playing a song, our song, the one Liam and I had danced to on our first anniversary. The music filled the silent apartment, a cheerful melody that now felt menacing and suffocating. I unplugged the speaker, my hands shaking. I stood in the darkness of the living room, trying to steady my breathing. It was him. It had to be him. He hadn't just moved out. He had left the digital ghost of himself behind, and he was pulling the strings. I decided to get out, to go to a friend's place. I walked to the front door, my mind racing. As my hand reached for the doorknob, I heard the sound that I will never forget. It was the soft whirring of the smart lock on the door, followed by a loud, definitive click. He had just unlocked the door for me. I didn't wait to see if he was on the other side. I ran to the back of the apartment, wrenched open the old, non-smart kitchen window, and scrambled out onto the fire escape. I called the police from a neighbor's apartment. They found no one inside my home, but the digital forensic team later confirmed that every single smart device had been accessed remotely from an IP address traced back to Liam. He had created a master backdoor into the entire system when he set it up. He was never just my ex-boyfriend. He was my home's administrator, and he had just reminded me that he could let himself in anytime he wanted.
When I broke up with Sarah, she cried, and I felt terrible. But the relationship was toxic, and I knew it had to end. I wished her the best and hoped we could both move on. The next morning, when I opened my front door to leave for work, there was a cup of coffee on the mat. It was from my favorite local cafe, exactly how I take it. There was no note. It was a nice gesture, I thought, but it made me uncomfortable. The day after that, a single red rose was taped to my car's windshield. My friends told me I was being cold. "She's just heartbroken," one said. "She's trying to show you she cares." But the gestures kept escalating in a way that didn't feel caring. It felt like surveillance. She somehow knew my new route to work and would be, coincidentally, parked along the way, waving as I drove past. She left a book on my doorstep, a book I had mentioned wanting to read in a private conversation a month before we broke up. She was showing me she remembered everything. She was showing me she was still listening. I blocked her number and all her social media profiles. The direct contact stopped, but the gifts continued. The real turning point came a week later. I left work and found a small plain envelope on my car's driver's side window. Inside was a photograph. It was a picture of me, asleep in my own bed, taken from the foot of the bed. It was grainy, as if taken in low light with a phone. The timestamp in the corner read 4:17 a.m. from the night before. I felt like I was going to be sick. I drove home in a state of pure panic. I searched my apartment, my heart pounding, convinced she was inside. She wasn't. I called the police. They were sympathetic, but said that without evidence of a break-in or a direct threat, their hands were tied. They couldn't prove she took the photo. They advised me to change my locks. I had a locksmith come out that very evening and change the locks on my door and all my windows. I finally felt a small flicker of safety. For a few days, there were no gifts, no coincidences. I started to breathe again. About a week later, I came home from work, exhausted. I put my key in the new lock, but before I could turn it, the door swung open. It was already unlocked. I froze, every muscle tensed. I cautiously pushed the door open and scanned the apartment. Everything looked normal. Nothing was out of place. Nothing was stolen. Relieved, but still deeply unsettled, I went into my bedroom, and there, placed neatly in the center of my pillow, was a single, folded piece of paper. My hands trembled as I opened it. The note, written in Sarah's familiar handwriting, contained only 9 words. "The new locks look good. You forgot to check the skylight." I only dated Mark for about 3 months. He was charming, intelligent, and incredibly intense. That intensity, which I initially found flattering, quickly became suffocating. He wanted to know where I was every second of the day. He'd get moody and suspicious if I didn't reply to a text within 5 minutes. I realized this wasn't passion. It was control. I ended it. He did not take it well. He bombarded me with calls and texts, alternating between begging for another chance and accusing me of betraying him. When I blocked his number, the real nightmare began. He didn't try to win me back. He decided to systematically dismantle my life until he was the only one I had left. It started at work. My boss called me into his office, looking grim. He had received an anonymous email filled with detailed and disgusting lies about me, that I was stealing from the company, that I had a substance abuse problem. The email included photos of me from my own private social media accounts, twisted to look incriminating. I was put on probation. Next, he went after my friends. He contacted my best friend, Jessica, pretending to be a concerned third party. He told her an elaborate, convincing story about how I was in a deep depression, how I had been saying terrible things about her behind her back. He used intimate details about our friendship, things I had told him in confidence, to make his lies believable. Jessica, confused and hurt, started pulling away from me. He did this with 2 other close friends, poisoning the well until I felt completely isolated. I was losing my job, my friends, my sanity. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. He never threatened me directly. He never showed up at my house. His harassment was insidious, a campaign of psychological warfare designed to make me feel utterly alone and helpless. I went to the police, but the emails were anonymous, the social media accounts he used were fake, and his manipulation of my friends wasn't illegal. There was nothing they could do. The final act came one Friday night. I had been fired from my job that day. Jessica wasn't answering my calls. I was sitting alone in my dark apartment, crying, feeling like my world had completely fallen apart. Then there was a knock on the door. I looked through the peephole and saw him. It was Mark. He was smiling, a calm, patient smile. "I think you're ready to talk now," he said through the door, his voice soft. "I told you they'd all disappoint you. I told you I was the only one you could count on." He hadn't just stalked me. He had emptied my life of everyone else, creating a vacuum that only he could fill. I looked at his smiling face through the distorted glass of the peephole and realized I wasn't looking at my ex-boyfriend. I was looking at a complete stranger, a terrifying monster who had been wearing a mask for the 3 months I thought I knew him.